Hello, my name is Annette Dalloo, and you are listening to The Heart of You. Today, we are going to be talking about dreams. We've all had those mornings where we wake up and the dream that we just had completely shakes us. We remember details. Maybe some of them were just weird. Maybe some of them were nonsensical, and you can't make heads or tails of what just happened in that dream. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss a little bit about how you can dissect your dreams and really analyze what is going on, not only in your subconscious, but in your higher self, as well as your spiritual journey. The first thing I would like to address is there might be many of you out there who say, well, I don't actually remember my dreams. I can tell you right now that one of the best practices to start remembering your dreams is to actually write them down. The second you wake up and you have that glimpse or that feeling of what you just experienced in your dream state, take a notebook or grab your phone and write it down as quickly as possible. Because as you all know, sometimes you remember your dream the second you wake up, but then you lose that memory over the course of the day as you get your day started. And then occasionally there will be little things that pop up throughout the day where you're like, oh, wait, yeah, I remember that. I had a dream about that last night. It's always best to write them down so you can remember them for the future. When I say future, I mean even months into the future. And I will give you a little example. When I first started writing down my dreams, I was writing them down just to get a little bit more recollection, also to see if maybe some of my dreams were prophetic dreams, if they were showing me something that was going to be happening in the future, and to analyze what exactly my dreams were showing me. There's one dream in particular that I would like to mention. In this dream, I was traveling to Las Vegas, which at the time I often did because of work. And when I was traveling there were all sorts of things that happened. There was a train that I missed, and I don't know why I was taking a train in Las Vegas, but just go with it. It's a dream. And then I started seeing very crystal clear numbers. So I saw the date that I was there. I saw the flight number that I took to get to Vegas for this particular trip. And I remembered those numbers as soon as I woke up. So when I wrote down the dream, I wrote those numbers down as well. The biggest part of the dream was when I was in Las Vegas, I was in a car and I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, all of these meteors just started hitting Earth, and there was fire and just chaos, and it was absolutely crazy. Now, as far as prophetic dreams go, the dream was not telling me that meteors were going to be hitting the Earth. That was not the point. The point was the dream was trying to instill upon me a particular feeling or a particular message. And I didn't actually get that message until after everything had transpired. Keep in mind, I wrote down this dream, and it wasn't until about 4 months later that I went back in my dream journal and I read about this dream again. And the incredible thing was, I had gone on a business trip to Las Vegas in March. I wrote down this dream in December of the previous year. When I went back to look at the actual flight that I took and the date that I flew to Las Vegas, it was the exact date and the exact time of my flight and the exact flight number of my flight that was in my dream. I was astonished. I was like, oh my God, that's craziness. I can't believe that it was exactly what was in my dream. What happened was my subconscious, my higher self, my angels, they were all giving me messages to let me know that this trip was not going to be great. And they were right. It didn't turn out to be the best trip in the world. It was definitely challenging in a lot of ways. There were a lot of things that happened on that trip that were just really unpleasant. Now, did it have a catastrophic effect on my life in any way? No, it really didn't. I mean, overall, I went on the trip. The job ended up being fine in the end and everything was okay. But while I was going through the entire process of that particular job, just one thing after another started happening. And it was almost as if the universe was telling me in that dream, hey, if you go on this business trip, it may not be the best thing in the world. Had I actually looked back on that dream journal and realized what my subconscious, what my higher self was trying to tell me, maybe I would have decided not to go on that trip, or maybe I would have been able to still go on the trip, but understand that there were going to be challenges that maybe I could have understood a little bit beforehand so I could have prepared myself. Now, that is just one example of a prophetic dream. Now, prophetic dreams for me personally are not that common. They happen every once in a while, and I have had them in the past and sort of made note of it, but I hadn't actually written them down. So I don't actually know the accuracy of everything that my dreams were showing me because prior to this time, I wasn't keeping track. But if you can take a look at your dreams in a dream journal, it can definitely give you a little bit of a heads up. Now, because these types of prophetic dreams are going to vary from person to person, depending on your gifts, depending on how your higher self and your guides actually communicate with you. So some of you out there might have prophetic dreams way more often, and some of you might not have any at all. So I want you to know that just because some people have prophetic dreams and other people don't, it doesn't mean anything other than the fact that that may not be where your gifts lie. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is when you have a dream that's scary or fearful, challenging, anything like that, don't panic. Just don't panic, because I can tell you right now that there are various reasons why you would have these types of dreams. I just went over a potential of maybe it is something that your guides are telling you that they're giving you a heads up about. Another reason why you might have a dream that is full of subject matter or things that are fearful is simply your subconscious working through your own fears. Throughout the course of my spiritual awakening, when I was transmuting these shadow sides of myself, when I was looking at the fears that I had that were ingrained in me, whether it was from childhood or maybe even from a past life, as I was working through these to get them sort of out of my system, get them dislodged from my energy body, and really able to look at these fears in order to be able to overcome them. The thing about transmuting fears is that you have to look at them. You have to see them and you have to feel them in order to understand that, you know what, I'm actually okay. I'm not afraid of this thing anymore. And I can understand it. I can see it, but it's not something that I'm fearful of. While you're working through a particular fear, that fear may come up in your dreams repeatedly over a period of time. And that is simply your higher self's way of showing you that fear and saying, hey, this is something maybe that you need to look at. And once you look at it, and once you realize that it's not as scary as you think it is, that is when you can start overcoming that fear. So that is another reason why you might have a dream that is unpleasant, that is scary, whatever experience that your higher self is wanting you to have. Another really common way that all of us receive messages in our dreams are through symbols. And I can almost guarantee you most of you out there have remembered a dream at some point in your life where you were like, oh, I dreamed of a snake and the snake bit me and I don't know why that happened. Or let's say if you had a dream about spiders or rainstorms or tornadoes or floods, any sort of really big symbol is going to be something you're going to want to look up and take notice of. For example, if you see water in your dream, Water is always representative of emotion. There have been times where I've had dreams about tidal waves or floods or something like that. And those are those times when I know that maybe whatever emotions I'm feeling are overwhelming me in my present moment and in my waking life. My dream state is showing me, hey, you might want to take a look at this as well, because this is something that is overwhelming your nervous system. It's overwhelming your waking state. And if you don't deal with these emotions, they could get bigger, right? Sometimes you can Google dream signs. If you, let's say, to take the tidal wave as an example, you can say tidal wave dream signs. And there are any number of websites that will tell you various different interpretations of whatever that symbol happens to be. There are many interpretations based on whatever website you're looking at. And if you're wondering, well, okay, I looked at this website and it said this about tidal waves, and then I looked at another website and it said something completely different, that is where you're going to use your intuition. As you're reading the article or as you're looking up the website, I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath and just feel into what feels like the right answer for you. Because if you just look at it and read it from your intellect, from your brain, you're going to end up being confused because you're not feeling into what the actual answer that you're being guided to. Make sure that you are tapped in when you are trying to get these answers. If you are not able to be tapped in while you are looking for these answers, that is where writing the dream down can be very helpful in the future, because if you're not in a good space to be able to feel into the answer, then maybe wait a couple of days, come back to it, feel into it, get into your centered space, and then look for the answer, and then feel into what it is that your guides are telling you. I made an analogy at one point about divination and when you're trying to get the messages from the universe, that it's a bit like an investigation. You can use that same angle when it comes to dreams as well. Make note of any colors that you might remember from your dream. Make note of what sounds you might be hearing in your dream. Any symbols, obviously, that's what we're talking about right now, is any symbols that you have that are really prominent in your memory when you wake up. And then take all of those things like you would in a tarot card. So when you see the tarot card, you're not just looking at the number or the message of what the tarot card represents. You're looking at the image, what is actually being represented in that particular card. You're doing the same thing with your dreams. So you're taking note of all of the information that is given to you, and then you're just going to look at each piece and see how it creates a story as a whole. You can also dig even deeper by using your divination tools after you have a dream. If you would like to find out more information about what the dream was telling you, you can simply use your pendulum, or you can use any tarot or oracle cards, and that will give you more messages as well. I will do this often if I have a dream and I'm not quite sure what it's trying to tell me, if it's saying something that is prophetic, if it's simply my subconscious processing things that I've gone through recently, or if it's actually a message about something that I really do need to work on. I will simply grab my pendulum and I will ask my higher self and my angels, is this dream something that I need to take a look at? Or I will ask, was this a prophetic dream? I will also ask, is this something that you need me to know right now in this moment? And that's a really good way to sort of put your mind at ease, just in case you're having worries or fears surrounding the dream that you just had. Another good indication that it is a particular subject matter that you really need to take a look at in your conscious life is if you have a recurring dream. Now, this has only happened to me maybe twice in my entire life. I had a recurring dream when I was a child, and it was a pretty scary dream, and I didn't understand it. I had it maybe once every few months or maybe once a year. It became more infrequent the older I got. When I got older, I realized that the reason why the frequency of the dream subsided was because it was something that I had finally worked through. Now, once I was able to analyze this dream, because I still remember it, even though it was a dream I had when I was a child, it had that much of an impact on me. Once I was able to analyze it, I could see that elements of the dream were part of a past life that I had had. The elements that were chosen to be in this dream were elements that I was able to understand. The basic part of the dream was that I was with my mother and we were in a car. We were in a gas station getting gas, and basically my sister goes into the convenience store to get some food, and aliens come down and basically take over the area that we were in. They kill my sister, and my mom and I drive away sobbing our eyes out. That was the basic of the dream. Now, when you analyze that, are you going to take a look at the aliens as, okay, were these literal aliens? Well, not really. No, it's representative of some sort of threat. And for me, being a total sci-fi addict, like for me, those symbols of particular beings that were unfamiliar to me, that were threatening, that was the representative of what the story was. When I was finally able to delve into this dream, once I had access to the Akashic records, I could then see that this was a fear that I had simply based on a previous life. In a previous life, I had lost my sister, and I had so much grief surrounding that I really had to let that go. And that's why that dream happened when I was a child, because when you were first born into this next lifetime, you still hold on to some of that residual energy from those previous lives. So when I came in, I was much more receptive as a child to any of those energies, any of those experiences. When you have certain dreams that you remember from childhood, let's say, and you're able to look back on them, if you remember them, you can start seeing the patterns of various different things that you were working on as you were growing up into adulthood. That particular dream is a really good example of the fact that what they're going to show you is something that you can understand as far as the feeling of what you need to work through. The actual pieces of the dream, meaning being at a gas station, being in a car, things like that. Since this was a past life trauma that I had, obviously in that past life, it is very likely there weren't cars, there weren't gas stations, things like that. But they're going to show you an image, they're going to show you a scenario that is going to make sense to you in this lifetime. So just make sure that when you are analyzing your dreams, that you don't necessarily take every last detail as concrete information that, yes, okay, so if I dream of an apple, it is definitely an apple. It may not be an apple, it may be representative of something else. Another part of the dream state is astral projection. Now, this can be something that we can actually do when we are in our meditative states, but it is much easier to accomplish when we are in our full dream state. And oftentimes we don't even realize that that is what we're doing. Astral projection is simply that your soul and your higher self are off doing something else. Our bodies have to sleep because our bodies need to recover and recuperate, but our souls, our higher selves, don't need to do that. So basically, all you have to understand about astral projection is the fact that you are, in fact, in another place, experiencing possibly another dimension, having other experiences that your soul needs to have. And sometimes that can be scary for our conscious selves because we don't understand what's going on. For a very small amount of people, sometimes when we are astral projecting during sleep, it may take a couple of seconds for our souls and our higher selves to come back into the body. And if we happen to wake up with a start, so let's say there was a loud noise or a thunderstorm or something else that is going on in our environment that wakes us up, and our soul and our higher self is not quite ready to come back yet, some people can experience sleep paralysis, which means that they feel like they can't move. They are terrified because they can't move their arms and legs, and it's an incredibly uncomfortable feeling. It's not something that I personally have experienced, but I have actually worked with people who have had this happen. And the best thing to do in this situation is to simply relax and take a deep breath and understand that your soul and your higher self are going to come back to you. And once that happens, you'll be able to move again. Okay. So I just wanted to address that topic because it is something that does happen occasionally to people. It doesn't happen often, but it is something to mention. This type of astral projection that I'm talking about right now is actually involuntary. This is something that is happening while you were sleeping and you're not aware that it's happening. And essentially you wake up and you might have a feeling that you experienced a different place, a different dimension, a different time. The feeling of the dream is much different than it is if it's simply just your regular run-of-the-mill dream. Essentially, one way to figure out if it's something that you have done as far as astral projection, also you can call it astral travel. That is something also that happens. So maybe not necessarily going into another dimension, but literally traveling to another place around the world. Your soul is going to another particular location. You can simply ask as soon as you wake up from the dream, similar to what I was saying earlier, you can ask your cards, your pendulum, hey, was I astral traveling last night? Well, what was going on with that dream? That is another question that you can add to your list of questions to ask when you're doing your dream investigation. I have also heard of many accounts where people are able to purposely astral travel as well as astral project, and that is often called lucid dreaming. That is not something that I personally have had experience with or that I have done. I can't speak to it with great clarity. But if this is something that you have been working on or it's something that you're being led to work on, then I would highly recommend looking up some of these topics, getting some books, and doing a little bit more research on how you can purposely go forward in your dream state and astral project, astral travel. And that is a way of, some people will call it controlling your dreams and actually guiding where you are going in your dream. And I don't know that that's exactly the right terminology. It is more consciously understanding what is happening and where your soul and your higher self is taking you. So the difference would be your soul and your higher self is saying, hey, we're going to go over here on this wonderful adventure. And when you're unconscious about it, basically you are going along for the ride and not really understanding what is happening and why. If you are conscious about it, then you can actually have the experience with your soul and have a much richer envelopment in the environment in which you are traveling. The last thing I would like to talk about are messages. Messages from departed loved ones, messages from our angels, messages from the universe and our guides. Yes, of course, they can use symbols and all of the other things that we've been talking about today. But sometimes we get direct messages, whether it's from a departed loved one who might be coming to you in a dream to give you a message, or whether it is maybe somebody you don't even know, but you know them in a familiar way from an energy standpoint. This is especially important to mention if you have recently had somebody who has crossed over in the recent past, because oftentimes we hope that our passed on loved one is going to communicate with us in some way. And of course, as we have learned through the mediumship episode, that this is absolutely possible. The one thing I do want to remind you is that once somebody crosses over, it does take a bit of time before they are able to communicate with us. It depends on the person. Sometimes it could take a couple of days. Sometimes it could take weeks. Sometimes it can take months. It just depends on how much work they are doing on the other side before they are able to sort of come back down to our human vibration in order to communicate with us. One way to know if a message in a dream is coming from an actual loved one and not necessarily fears that you may be having is simply this: the message will always be loving. It will always be peaceful, and it will always have a resonance that makes you feel warm and happy. It may make you feel sad that they're no longer here, but you know that the message itself is coming from a place of love. If there are any messages of fear or any dissonance, any duality, division, anything like that, you can rest assured that that's most likely your own fears that are playing out in your subconscious. If you do decide to start doing some of this dream work, some of the dream journaling that I'm talking about, don't be surprised if your guides and your angels start really working with you and your dreams. I know that once I started working on mine, my guides were like, "Oh, cool. This is a really good way that we can communicate with her now." And they would literally wake me up at 4 a.m, at 3 a.m, at 2 a.m, just to make sure that I remembered whatever dream I was having. It was definitely effective, in which when they woke me up, I was able to remember the dream that I was literally just having, and I was able to write it down. In all fairness, not every single time, because I love my sleep. And if something wakes me up, I definitely want to just really go back right to bed. If that starts happening to you, you can absolutely set some boundaries and say, "You know what? I really need to get my rejuvenation and my sleep. Can you please not wake me up during this period of time?" So you can set those boundaries if you would like. If you would really like to find the time to work with your angels and work with your guides on your dreams, this is a really great way to do it. Your dream state is such a beautiful, magical, confusing, and spectacular world. And I would highly recommend exploring it if you would like to know more about what you are here to do. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.